Today I'm interviewing Jim Gera, the CEO of Harmonic Health, to learn more about his entrepreneurial journey. And thank you for joining us today, Jim.
Thank you, Mike. I'm excited to be on.
Today on our Business Spotlight interview, I'd like to ask you a few questions and have you share your experience with us and be as candid as you can. And there'll be a lot of younger entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs that will be listening in. If you had to start from square one in your business, what would you do differently?
Then we're still at square one. It's a new startup, so I don't know if it's a good question. I think as an entrepreneur going in, when I think about any of the businesses I've had, so I've had several startups that we've taken from idea to exit. You need to be ready to change direction, to pivot, to hunker down and work on things that may not seem like they're working and really understand like why is it working, why is it not working. Doing a new business in a startup is just brutally difficult, and it's very different than having a regular job. So I would say a lot of the things I don't know if I would think about anything necessarily different, but I certainly would think about and advise anybody who's doing this to just be ready for almost anything.
So I went through your LinkedIn profile and I looked at Harmonic Health. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing and a little bit about your past experience in different startups. You said you've done a few of these, and tell us what Harmonic Health and your startup, what you're trying to accomplish with Harmonic Health, if you would, please.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. So I've been in healthcare 25 years or so. Have done work at large organizations, smaller ones. This is the first time I'm working in healthcare in a business that personally affects me. So our Harmonic Health, our focus is on Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, these neurodegenerative
Wow.
diseases.
Wow.
And yeah, and our the main core piece of what this our company does is we partner with physician groups, could be primary care, could be a neurology group, and we help them manage the patients and the family members that are suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia. I have three family members who suffer from the disease, so I live this on a daily basis, and it is one area of healthcare that has been for the most part abandoned, and really uh, very little has been done to really help support families and patients that are suffering from the disease. So our goal is to really help them out and provide people with plans and resources and the support they need to best help their loved ones and best help themselves through what is an extraordinarily difficult and challenging period of time.
So this business is very personal to you, I take it from what you've just told us. And
Yep.
meaning, how long have you been working in the startup and what does that look like from a startup standpoint? Who's involved with you today?
Oh, yeah, it's great. The exciting thing about doing a startup is you're the first employee. So I've the last three roles I've had, I've been the first employee, which is always interesting. So we initially launched in March and got the funding and working with a venture studio called Redesign Health.
Okay.
And so you really start hiring key people on your team. You start further building upon the basic business and the forecast and such. We launched fairly quickly with our first customers. I started in March and we launched in June with our first customer.
Okay.
Uh, Mainly because my feeling a lot of times is, especially as an entrepreneur, there's so many ways to make things perfect, and that's just never going to happen. So you might as well just get started and start, essentially do what you're supposed to do as a company. For us, we need to be serving patients, so we need to get out as quickly as possible to serve patients and to engage with physicians and the patients. So yeah, that's been uh, it's been it's been an interesting journey so far, and it's like a lot of startups. It changes sometimes two or three times a day. It's constantly changing and evolving. Uh, and you always have to be ready for sort of the new things you have to be working on. I think the other thing in a startup that I would say that's always really challenging is you do every role. There's just
Right.
I work on accounting and finance. I turn around and work on branding and marketing. I do 2 or 3 calls for business development or new client sales. I turn around and work with a physician that is we're trying to partner with. I you know just spent an hour earlier this morning going through a bunch of our care plans and our clinical metrics and such. When you're doing a new business, there's no part of the business that you're not touching.
Right. What are some of the biggest learnings that you've had as an employer since you began your businesses? So you've had several, and as an employer, you've had many lessons learned, I'm sure. So can you share some of those lessons learned that you could provide to some of our listeners and those who watch the Business Spotlight series?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. Yeah, I'm a big believer in letting you hiring the right people and letting them do their job, even if that's not how you would do it. So there's a lot of times I'll have somebody I've brought onto the team and they do things very differently than I would have done it myself.
Right.
I think you really have to, especially as a leader, you just have to accept that people are going to do things different. You don't want to micromanage those things. You want to give people autonomy. You want to give them trust, and you want to give them support to really try to thrive and be successful themselves. And I think that's key. But at the same time, and this is one of the certainly a lesson learned for me a few times is if somebody's not right for the position, you just need to move on. You generally can't make it work. A lot of
Right.
times I see people move, hey, they're not working out in this area. Let's move them over to a different department or work with a different team. If it's not working, it's just not working. And it's better to make that decision sooner than later. And I know a lot of people, especially early entrepreneurs, they're not comfortable with, firing people. And so I would say that you have to look at it through the lens of that employee that's not working out. It's as miserable for them as it is for you. And so you need to
Right.
make a quick decision and move on. And then, yeah, I think you need to constantly challenge your team, but you still have to be there to help support them and such. I also, the other thing I think that's really worked out well historically for myself has been hiring a team that's diverse,
Okay.
especially yeah, especially diverse from like their backgrounds and their thinking processes.
Hmm.
Hiring a bunch of in healthcare, if I hired a bunch of people from like the health plan side, we would
Hmm.
do everything the same way the health plans did it. If we hired
Right.
everybody from the hospital side, that it would be the same lens. So getting people from a variety of backgrounds and different different ways of thinking and different experiences, I think really creates an environment that's really helpful to be innovative and creative and really good at problem solving. Because as startup, especially entrepreneurial work, it's a lot of problem solving.
Right. Right. I saw some of the team members that you've added. It looks like that you've learned a lot over a period of time. There's some pretty high-powered folks that are on your team that I've seen. And I read the book. I just finished the book called The Who, and they talked about it cost 15 times the person's salary if you hire the wrong person. So it gets very expensive. And I'm sure you learned in your early years, right, hiring the wrong person and keeping them too long is something that's detrimental overall to your business. So thanks for sharing your experience with us. Any other insights on hiring?
I'd say the other thing with that is, the person who our chief clinical officer was formerly the CNO, the chief nursing officer at Amazon Care. So we've got she's phenomenal, just incredible person. And we were talking about that, and she had hired at a company she had been at, she had hired somebody who'd worked with her previously, had been a rock star. And when they
Hmm.
got into that new environment, which was a smaller startup, they
Hmm.
really struggled and really had a hard time. And so
Right.
I think that's also something to remember is that individuals you've worked with in the past may not be the best individuals going forward. And that just may be because the environment and the situation and such is different. I think those are again, you're hiring a person like I hired my product person, I hired my clinical person. they're much smarter at their jobs than I am. And so the worst thing I could do is try to make them do the things I want. Hey,
Mhm.
I'm here to set the vision. I'm here to grow the business. Uh, you're hiring people to be experts in their area and for you to help them be successful. So I think the funny thing about being a CEO is it's a very lonely position in that, you're getting pressure from all over. But the reality is like my job is to help my team. Like I basically work for my team and trying to make them be more successful. That's my view at least.
Right. So what qualities do you look for in employees and how do you foster a positive and productive work environment? So you talked about, the kind that you're hiring from a specialist standpoint, but how do you really look for the positive and when you're building a culture? So obviously when you're moving from a startup, it's a different level of stress than someone who's working for a really large organization where people can really specialize on a very, niche part of a business when you work for companies that have thousands of employees. When you're working for a startup where you've got to be you have a specialist hat on, but you got to be a generalist because you're wearing multiple hats when you're trying to build, a startup company. How do you foster a positive and productive environment?
I mean, I think again, you have to build a environment that's has candor and honesty. You're transparent. In our organization, there's we're wide open with finances. We're wide open with where we're at in our growth of the company. All this, really everything that's happening within the company, there is a lot of transparency. So I think that helps foster a really collaborative and a really good environment. I think the other thing that it's really easy in a startup to become really focused on how hard it is and how difficult, and just constantly be thinking about
Hmm.
the business
Hmm.
rather than the people. So I believe you have to be really thoughtful and prescriptive about focusing on the people first, like starting off a conversation with asking,
Okay.
like, how are you doing, what's going on, how are you, like, you have to put your people and
Right.
their personal lives have to matter more than the business. Because if you don't care about your people, then like why the hell are they going to care about helping the business?
Gotcha. So an open and collaborative environment is one of your secrets to success and how you build your culture. That's what I
Yeah,
heard.
yeah, yeah. And I think, I mean, the other thing is, I've had this a few times where we'll have a meeting and people have been in a large organization like a Cigna or an Amazon Care, and and they get there and they're at the meeting and they're really there to just kind of take notes and listen. My feeling is like, if you're at this meeting, if you're on this call, like, contribute. You have to be involved. Like, I want to hear your thoughts and opinions. And just because I have the title of CEO does not mean my opinion is more accurate or correct or even more important. And so I think you really have to create an environment where everybody feels like they can be open and honest and candid about about anything within the organization, especially early on. Like, the culture, I mean, we have less than 10 people right now. And so the
Hmm.
culture of the organization is the people. It's not a document, or it's not a series of values or mission statement. It's how
Hmm.
we as human beings conduct each ourselves on a day-to-day basis.
So what do you attribute your growth to? You're starting a new company, but you're obviously having some growth and success. What do you attribute your growth to?
Um, Not thinking there's a ceiling. I just, I have as my wife would probably say, it's probably a crazy view of certain things. I kind of think like, oh, let's just go do this. Like, we can go do this. That seems
Mhm.
reasonable. And it's probably like a characteristic that an entrepreneur has. Like,
Right.
if somebody sat down and said, well, what's running a company like? And I told them what it was really like,
Right.
it sounds horrible. It just sounds horrible, right?
Hmm.
But part of it is I end up thinking, oh my God, we can totally transform the way Alzheimer and dementia is addressed in this country. We can create a comprehensive dementia care platform, and there's 7 to 10 million people suffering from this disease. We should be
Right.
able to treat 1 million of these patients within another year or so. That's reasonable because they need it. And
Right.
so having honestly, some crazy goals like that and thinking all that makes perfect sense. I think it helps. I mean, my last company, Fusion5, we in 9 months went from having, myself and a couple of hires to having a couple hundred people and being in 41 states with,
Wow,
almost 7,000 doctors and managing a few $1 billion. So, and that,
phenomenal.
yeah, that was because I was like, yeah, why couldn't we go into 40 states? That seems reasonable. So there's a, when you're an entrepreneur, there's a fine line between strategic vision and just plain damn stupidity. Because you're like, oh, we could do that. That's reasonable.
Wow, amazing. That is so amazing. You have a great story. So speaking about your wife and your family, so how do you balance your personal life with the demands of running your business? And obviously running your business today, but you've obviously a serial entrepreneur. So how do you balance your personal life with the demands of running a business?
It's a good question, Mike. I think I'm balancing it better now. My wife would certainly say my last couple uh, businesses, I didn't balance it very well. But I think that's what I try to do is make sure that the things that are important in my life, family, kids, things like that, that I build that into my schedule and make sure that, it's just part of what I'm doing. And it's, things like even, one of the things I've never liked in like the business environment is like people eating at their desk or people skipping
Yeah,
lunch. It's like, I like take the break, take the stop, because I also feel it's like my contribution to this organization, to our company at Harmonic, is it's my mind, my thinking, my brain that really matters. And so it has to be as healthy and rested and vibrant as possible. And that doesn't happen by just continually cranking on work. It comes with having a balance. And I think that your own self cultivation, your own focus on your relationships and the people that really matter, at the end of the day, that's the stuff that's really important, and you need to focus on those things. and
right.
uh the reality is, a lot of business, we create we create a prioritization, we create the urgencies, we create the stress ourselves. And if you step back, a lot of times you can be like, my team could handle this, or it's a question of timing, and we just need to wait for the market to change or something. And so I think you create a lot of undue stress. So I really try to make sure I take the time. I take, when it's downtime, it's real downtime. I make sure when my employees go on vacation that they completely disconnect from the email system so they can't actually answer emails. So it's really creating a way that prioritizes the things that really matter in your life.
So you respect the boundaries of the time off and the personal time is what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to, because that's what makes you uh, that's what helps make you who you are. That's what makes you a really um, effective and impactful either leader, manager, or employee, is being able to have the balance with the things that really matter. I mean, I'm working because I like doing work, I like building companies, but really because I want to affect an area of healthcare that I feel is dramatically underserved and highly neglected. But the other thing is, I'm not going to work myself to death, because, I want to spend time with my family and friends and want to do the things that I love doing. And that's what makes me who I am. And I don't want to, it's not just about work. I don't define myself as a human being by like my role as a CEO or my role within this company. That's not, it's one of the aspects of who I am.
Right. Got it. Okay, I got one more question for you.
Perfect.
So when you go back someday to write that book, and by the way, I can help you write that, and I got the name for it. Okay.
All right. Good.
Fearless by Jim Gera. Name it Fearless, right? For all the things that you've done. So you're your 24-year-old self, right? Just out of college or what have you, and you've getting ready to start your you've got some knowledge, you want to go start your first business. What are some of the things and your biggest learnings that you would share with that new entrepreneur who is just fearless and wants to go out and start their first business?
I think it's the fear is a good question. I think you can't be afraid to fail, but you also can't be afraid to succeed. I think a lot of times the most stress, like when things are difficult and you're failing, it's somewhat easy, right? When you're doing well and successful and you're growing, that's really difficult and challenging. And the expectations you have of yourself and the expectations people have externally of you really amplify, right? So I would say that the ability to be unafraid of failing, but also equally unafraid of success, and then being able to be humble the entire time. I think that's one of the things I've learned over a period of time is where I have been successful and letting that, feed my ego and letting that, you know, become of who I think I am, like who I like, oh, I'm important because of, these success I've had. It's ridiculous, right? So I focus on more of getting rid of my ego, not trying to feed it. So I would also I would advise myself in the younger days of, be open, be humble, be willing to accept support.
Yeah.
That's another thing. I'll tell you, I'm surprised at the number of people I've worked with that feel like, I don't want to go ask for help because somebody will not think I can lead this organization, or I can't,
Oh, wow.
like I'm the CEO, so I should still be the one doing these things. I should be that responsibility. It's like, no, no way. Like you ask for help every single time. Like ask for help, be
Oh, wow.
vulnerable, be open to suggestions. You're just trying to make the business successful. Don't worry about whether or not you're seen as a rock star or not, because if the business does well, you're going to be very happy.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, what I'll ask you to do to close this up is one, give us the name of your business again, give us your elevator pitch, and then tell us how they can learn more about your company.
The name of the company is Harmonic Health, and you can go to harmonichealth.com. We are focused on comprehensive dementia care. We partner with physicians, whether primary care, neurology, or health systems. Um, but feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn under Jim Gera, our LinkedIn Harmonic Health. Uh, Reach out to us if you're someone who's affected by dementia, if you're a physician that's looking for somebody to come in and help. Any interest. I actually spend, Mike, now like a couple a couple hours almost every morning, like going through all the LinkedIn's messages I'm getting from folks. So I welcome anyone reaching out.
Well, congratulations. Thanks again for joining us today. I greatly appreciate it.